And through all of this, there was this just overwhelming smell of the broken display bottle of Love's Baby Soft. So I felt like my crime was obvious to all.
Hey, I'm Mike Hipple, and welcome to another episode of Live Through That, the companion podcast to my book where I look at influential 90s musicians and where they are today. On this podcast, we dig deeper into a pivotal moment in the lives of some of the artists I feature in the book. Today, I'm super excited to have Tanya Donelly on the show. I've been a huge fan of hers since I was 17 years old and heard the Throwing Muses, and then later her work with the early Breeders records, and finally with Belly and her amazing solo work. The story she tells today goes back a little further than that, though, to an incident that happened when she was just 12 years old. I'll let Tanya take it from here.
My mom and I had a car accident. She was driving at the time. It was 1978. It was a couple of weeks before Christmas, and we were headed to a mall, a very rare mall trip, go Christmas shopping. The mall was a couple of bridges over from Newport, which is my hometown, and I'd brought all money from the past couple of weeks. And yes, in the 70s, people would hire a 12-year-old to take care of their babies. By the end of the day, I had spent all of my babysitting cash on presents for friends and family. And this was during a very, very brief time that my friends and I were expecting. Very brief and mostly unsuccessful, petty shoplifting stage. So on the way out of, we passed a perfume counter, and I spontaneously swiped a display bottle of Love's Baby Soft perfume aimed at adolescents and basically smelled like a clean diaper. And we left the store. It had started to snow while we were in the mall, and on the way, we were going over the Jamestown Bridge, and we hit a pocket of ice, and the front of our car flew up, and we slid over into the opposite lane at sort of an angle that landed us partially on top of the oncoming car in the other lane. Again, it was the 70s, so I didn't have a seatbelt on. And so I flew forward. It just kind of slammed forward on impact. I'm trying to remember. Hit in two places. I hit the windshield with my face, basically, and head, and my right leg hit this plastic shelf that used to be in old cars just under the glove compartment. It was called a shelf, I think, or something like that. And my right leg was cut 3/4 of the way around. It severed the muscle and nerves and fractured the bone pretty badly. And okay, so that's unlucky. The lucky part is the bleeding wasn't as bad as it could have been because the engine block was forced back into the front seat, so my leg was actually also partially cauterized, which is, I guess, lucky. I mean, gross, but also lucky. When the ambulance and fire truck came, or trucks, I don't actually know how many, we had to be extracted by the jaws of life. And through all of this, there was this just overwhelming smell of the broken display bottle of Love's Baby Soft. So I felt like my crime was obvious to all. And so when the EMTs put me on the stretcher, I apparently asked them politely not to throw me over the side of the bridge. And I think I did this because I was in shock, and I had the scary irrational thought that they'd throw me out because I was broken or something. But my mom, who spoke to recently about this, thinks that I thought they were going to throw me over because I had stolen the perfume, and this would be my sentence for doing that. And that sort of odd, schismic way of viewing the situation sent me into this weeks, months long, just sense of, at 12, this sounds absurd because I was 12 years old, but I did just go through this in just this place of needing something to fill this void of trust in that, that I was going to live and live to adulthood and be healthy and strong again, because I was, this was a lot of PT that I had to go through for a year after to get back into walking shape and full walking shape anyway. But I just went to for a 12-year old odd space with it, and demanded of my mother and my parents that they let me go stay in an ashram for a while with a family friend. And my mother joined me. I don't mean to laugh at I'm not laughing at the concept of joining a community like that. I'm laughing at a 12-year-old deciding that she's going to do it on her own. My mom very patiently joined me there for what was going to be my introduction to it. And it was a wise thing to do, because by the end of the weekend I was like, okay, I need to get back to my friends and my life. And and there were a lot of chores involved too, at the ashram. But that sort of set, yeah, I didn't realize that at the time. And actually, as I just re-entered childhood, several weeks later in a more appropriate frame of mind, for my age, I didn't really recognize that place that I went to. I didn't walk out of. It stayed with me, and it became a search that lasted for decades. I think anyone who's had an injury that shocks your system like this, and I think almost everyone has a version, that it sticks with you when something, I guess, brushes close mortality. It opens something up, and for me, it opened up something that I intensity for, which is curiosity and searching and seeking and wanting something that would bring some peace and some sense to things that aren't peaceful and don't make sense. Over the years, that ended up including some great and some not great things. The included, what could only be called an obsession with the Beatles as a teenager. Their music inspired me to pick up a guitar in the first place and to write my first song. And the great also included some really great reading. Like, I got very into the poetry of the mystics and like Rumi and etc. And on the flip side of the great stuff would include the not great stuff, which was, periods of too many drugs and too many, really unhealthy relationships. And the good and the bad would include starting up a few bands and then dipping out of them, drifter style. I've figured out healthier filters for it, and sort of embraced it for what it is, which is just the journey. I mean, I'm not saying that this one accident informed everything that came after, because that's just not the case, and it would be life reductive to to just draw a red line under one thing, but I think an early physical blow like this does echo for a while, and this one did and continues.
Tanya still bears a scar on her leg from that incident, a reminder of how sometimes a random accident can influence the decisions you make further down the line. Today, she's still recording music, including a new Belly record in 2018 and lots of solo recording. In 2022, she'll release an album with Brian Sullivan under the name The Loyal Seas, so be sure to look out for that one. Also, be sure to look up her cover of a song called Bless the Telephone on her Bandcamp. It's a gorgeous song that I think you're going to love. And speaking of love, here are a few things that Tanya is currently loving.
My friend Michael just gave me a book called Finding the Mother Tree by Suzanne Simard. She's a tree scientist, tree whisperer. It's just sort of a beautiful book about her educational journey and her relationship with trees and plants in general. And it's sort of just focusing on her discovery and it kind of shining a light on the fact that forests are social constructs, are social places, and just the way trees and plants communicate. And it's just fascinating and so exciting to read. Also, Summer of Soul, I just saw a few weeks ago and have watched several times since. And that is just honestly sort of all I want to listen to right now. And Dean and I have sat down a couple of times and seeing it for the first time and just said, look at each other like, Summer of Soul again. It's just, I mean, the musicians and just the joy. It's just amazing that, you know, everybody knows what it is, the 1969 Harlem Cultural Festival. But it just, Mahalia and Mavis and Sly and the Family Stone and Gladys Knight and Stevie Wonder, Chambers, but it's just endlessly inspiring and beautiful and joyful and wonderful music. I'm listening to 2 albums on heavy rotation right now, which are kind of go-tos for me. So I know that I've brought them up before, but they're kind of these are 2 albums that inspire me to work, which is why I sort of go through stages of returning to them, which is Passenger by Lisa Hannigan, which has one of my favorite songs, Little Bird, ever written on it, among other beauties. Ash Wednesday by Elvis Perkins, and While You Were Sleeping is one of my, also another favorite song of mine. It's perfect. Movie-wise, I would think I watched Akira Kurosawa's Dreams for the first time in a long time, a couple of months ago, and that always I always feel like yeah, I recognize this headspace. Hit that movie it's just 8 vignettes, kind of mythological, beautiful, just gorgeously shot, amazingly beautiful to look at.
While you're checking out some of Tanya's recommendations, be sure to also check out my book, Live Through That, available everywhere now. You can find out more about what Tanya is up to these days, as well as some 40 other musicians. And if you like this show, please subscribe and give us a 5-star rating and a review, and tell your friends. We'll have new episodes out every Tuesday. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.